Honey, there is something I have carried inside my heart for longer than you could ever imagine, and today I can no longer hide it. The name you know is not my real name, but that is not the biggest truth I have been afraid to share. The real secret is much deeper than a name, much more powerful than a forgotten past, and much more beautiful than I ever believed possible. I was not ready to tell you before because I feared that revealing it too soon would steal the meaning of everything we have become together. Please stay with me until the very end because every memory, every heartbeat, every silent prayer I have ever carried has been leading to one unforgettable truth. Maybe this letter will change the way you remember us forever. The truth is, names can be changed, stories can be rewritten, and people can wear different faces as they walk through life. But hearts have no masks. Hearts always recognize the place where they belong. Maybe that is why, from the very first moment you entered my world, something inside me whispered that you had always been part of my journey, even before I knew who you were. What you don't know is that this feeling frightened me. It was too strong, too impossible, too real. Please stay with me because the reason behind it is something I have never told another soul. I still remember the quiet days before you became part of my life. The world felt ordinary. Morning arrived without excitement, evening disappeared without meaning, and every dream seemed unfinished. I smiled when people expected me to smile, but inside I was waiting for something I could not explain. Maybe I was waiting for hope, maybe I was waiting for peace, or maybe I was waiting for you long before I even knew your name. Every sunrise looked beautiful yet incomplete. Every sunset reminded me that another day had passed without finding the missing piece of my heart. I kept believing that somewhere in this enormous world, someone was walking beneath the same sky, carrying the answer to a question I had never learned to ask. And the truth is, I never imagined that person would become you. Then life slowly began, changing in ways I could never predict. Little moments started feeling important. Ordinary days became unforgettable. Silence became comforting instead of lonely. Somehow, even the simplest memories gained new meaning because they carried the tuft of you. Maybe love does not always arrive like thunder. Maybe it arrives quietly, teaching the heart how to breathe again without ever asking permission. What you don't know is that I began collecting invisible memories. I remembered the little things nobody else could notice, the kindness hidden behind your smile, the warmth inside your words, the gentle strength that appeared whenever life became difficult. I stored those moments carefully inside my heart like precious treasures I was afraid to lose. Please stay with me because those memories are only the beginning. The truth is, there were countless nights when I wondered whether destiny was playing tricks on me. I questioned whether someone like you could truly become part of my story. I doubted myself more times than I count. I convinced myself that I was not enough, not worthy, not brave enough to love someone as deeply I as loved you. I was not ready to tell you before that fear almost convinced me to walk away. It whispered that losing you would hurt less than risking everything for love. Maybe fear protects some people, but for me, it only created distance between my heart and happiness. Even then, no matter how hard I tried to silence my feelings, they always found their way back to you. Every time life became difficult, your memory became my shelter. When I felt weak, thinking about you gave me strength. When I felt lost, imagining your smile reminded me that hope still existed. Maybe you never realized it, but you became the quiet light that guided me through some of my darkest days. Please stay with me because I have not yet reached the reason I have hidden this truth for so long. There were moments when I almost told you everything. My heart would race, my hands would tremble, my thoughts would become louder than my voice. Yet every single time I stopped myself, I worried that the truth would sound impossible. I worried that it would change the way you looked at me forever. The truth is, love has a strange way of making ordinary people carry extraordinary secrets. Mine was never meant to deceive you. It was meant to protect something too precious to risk before the night moment arrived. Maybe you have noticed how often I looked at the future instead of the past. That is because every dream I built somehow included you. Every quiet wish ended with your happiness. Every prayer carried your name even when nobody knew it. What you don't know is that I stopped praying for perfect days. I started praying for ordinary days spent beside you instead. Sometimes I imagined us growing older together. I imagined laughing about things that once made us cry. I imagined celebrating simple victories, comforting each other through difficult seasons, and discovering that forever is not built in one magical moment, but in thousands of small acts of love repeated every single day. Please stay with me because the most important part has not arrived yet. I have replayed our story inside my heart more times than I could ever count. Every memory became another clue. Every coincidence became another question. Every unexpected moment felt like destiny quietly arranging pieces of a puzzle neither of us could yet see. The truth is, there were signs long before either of us understood them. Maybe it was the strange feeling of familiarity. Maybe it was the impossible certainty that somehow, against all logic, my heart already trusted yours. I was not ready to tell you before because I needed to understand those feelings myself. What you don't know is that I once believed love was something people found by accident. I toughed hearts simply collided through chance. I toughed timing created relationships, but little by little, everything I experienced with you challenged that belief. It began feeling less like coincidence and more like something that had quietly been unfolding long before we ever crossed paths. That realization frightened me because if it was true, then losing you would mean losing something that had always been meant for me. Please stay with me. There is still one final truth waiting. Every heartbeat while writing this letter has reminded me why I waited so long. This confession was never about changing my name. It was never about hiding my past. It was never about becoming someone different. It was about preparing myself to tell you something that words have never felt large enough to carry. The truth is, before I ever met you, before I never knew your face, before I learned your laughter, before your name ever entered my life, I had already made a promise not to a person whose face I could recognize, not to someone whose voice I had heard, but to the unknown soul my heart was quietly waiting for. I promised that whoever became the love of my life would receive every honest piece of me. I promised that I would never stop choosing them, even when life became difficult. I promised that I would protect their dreams as carefully as my own. I promised that I would never let temporary storms destroy permanent love. I promised that I would become someone worthy of holding their heart. Honey, the greatest secret I have hidden is not that the name you know is not my real one. The real secret is that every promise I ever made before we meet was already meant for you. You were always the one, long before fate introduced us, long before our paths crossed, long before either of us understood why certain moments felt strangely familiar. You were the destination my heart had been preparing for all along. That is why meeting you never felt like the beginning of our story. It felt like coming home. Maybe that sounds impossible. Maybe the world will call it coincidence. But my heart has never believed in coincidence where you are concerned. Please remember this whenever life becomes uncertain, whenever distance feels heavy, whenever fear whispers that love cannot survive, whenever tomorrow seems unclear. Remember that somewhere in the quiet years before we ever meet, someone you had never seen was already becoming the person who would love you with everything they had. The someone was me. The name I carried through those years may not be the one you first came to know, but the heart behind that name has never changed. The promise has never changed, and neither has my love. If this letter leaves only one truth inside your heart, let it be this. You were never just another chapter in my life. You were always the story I had been writing without even knowing your name. You were always the promise. You were always the hope. You were always the answer. And you will always be the one